My name is Hirotaka Koike. I'm originally from Japan. I'm the organizing partner of the United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth. Major Group for Children and Youth, in short UNMGCY, is the UN General Assembly mandated platform for young people to engage in intergovernmental processes and the other relevant discussions happening at the UN related to sustainable development. So my role in this platform is to coordinate the youth organization movements, national platforms, to have a meaningful discussion, a meaningful space within intergovernmental negotiations where the real decision making are taking place. So towards that, my role is really to ensure that they have full information, they know how to engage, what to say, a lot of the access issues. So we really try to help, but also we try to make sure that the inclusive democratic voices are heard in the UN in order to avoid individualization, but we want to really make sure that collective voices are present in the decision making. I think there are two aspects when we are talking about spaces. So one thing is about having a youth spaces within formal structure. So which means having a young people or youth engagement mechanism within the actual membership process, like a G20. That one thing is important. But also it is important to have youth-friendly spaces where the young people are free to express what they think and having constructive discussions instead of thinking about politics or kind of dynamics. It's more about you can actually discuss what you think and then develop the collective positions. So those two spaces are critical. If it's only one, then it's not enough. Because if it's only G20, then where the voice is coming from? If it's only youth space, then where that voice is going to, right? So these two are absolutely important. The case of Y20, I think there's a little bit of discussions how we should understand, because the impact of G20 is not limited to the countries of the G20, but actually it goes beyond that, and the member states of the G20 are big, which means the Y20 has a crucial role to ensure that includes the voices of those who are not part of it. From small countries, from landlocked developing countries, there are a lot of countries that have no say in this decision making. So I think it's important to have a Y20 for those who are coming from the country, but this space would be absolutely important when it includes the voices of those who are unrepresented and marginalized. Because the point is, G20 countries are strong and the young people from those countries have more privilege. Then we need to be mindful of those privileges. But if you do that, then Y20 become real inclusive space, and then that has a meaningful impact. I think, so yes, the spaces are important, but also the question is how are we gonna use them? And if you use narrowly or silo or non-inclusive, then the space is going to be a bad space. But if we use well, I think that provides a lot of opportunity for those people who are under the global injustice, and then we can truly make the G20 something that make a good impact on the global politics, global sustainable development, because even though the G20 may be too exclusive and then it's maybe not democratic, but nonetheless they play still a big role in this current global political architecture. So I think having Y20, making the voices of those unrepresented would be crucial in this conversation. The future behavior should be contextualized within what we want to achieve, right? Not just, this job marketing and the labor would be like this in this current trajectory, then that's not enough. We want to make a good direction for that discussion, right? So I think the first of all, we need to really discuss where we want to go, and then that should be defined within the planetary boundaries, and then rights to development for those who do not enjoy the basic human rights. So I think within this context and the framework, we can discuss how we want to think about the trajectory of the future work. The one thing is important to be remembered is that politicians will not make how it look like, yeah? Because currently no one knows what is the future work per se, and it's very hard to define. We can think, imagine, guess, but that doesn't mean you can define. So with this constraint, what can we do? I think the important things that we can do is really to set the guideline minimum protection, social protection for those that are imperative for human life. And there's no future work if you do not have a food, housing, education, etc. So there is a bare minimum needs that people should enjoy. And then the discussion should be built on that. So I think what we can think about the future work is really about what is enabling environment where people can be actually creative to do something for better future, right? But then you cannot tell people to what to do, because there's no ownership. You cannot tell certain people, you cannot tell organization, government, or even companies to do this and that. They're not gonna do it because there's no ownership. I think that's why it's also important to have everybody on board, and then having a minimum spaces where people can actually think and do the action toward the future work. Because when people have those basic social protection flow, human rights to expression, etc., then they can be creative and do something. Yeah. If you do not have a housing, etc., what they do gonna be a necessity action. So the importance is the future work cannot be defined by a few people. The people are creating future work in its own time, in its own languages, in its own culture, and its own way. What we can do as a policy maker, decision maker of the G20, and then the structure of Y20 is that to set the minimum for everybody that they can think and then create their own future work. I think that's important discussions, and then that's something the Y20 people and like us need to think, and includes voices of those who want to be creative but cannot be because of the current condition. The current discourse of those kind of important topics are very, to me, a little bit flirting over the nice words. I think we need to realize why we need to discuss and address those issues within education. Because education has the power to change people. Yeah? But why we need to change and where we want to change towards. The fundamental inequality that exists in the current global architecture, fundamental inequality that you cannot even fix by yourself. There are those things that you cannot change on your way. You cannot change in your country alone. The global, for example, the global citizenship, education for sustainable development, those are very important because it is fundamental to set the mindset, to understand where the root causes of the current inequality and the global problem, including environmental degradation and catastrophe. People need to understand that why this is a big issue, and then why it is happening. And then through that, and it's only education, that people really understand that there's a structural issues that people cannot solve individually. There is a solution that is collective, universal approach that respects every country and every people. It is not right to impose certain way of life certain way of understanding, and a certain human rights. People have their own determination, the sovereignty to think and to define their own life. So respect that, but at the same time, we cannot respect every way just because they say so. Certain countries need to stop consumption and the production to some extent in order to allow other people to have more life. But the current architecture and the current education do not give so much space and then universal understanding of our lives. So I think education needs to be reoriented towards how our society are sustained based on what planet provides, and then how our consumption are really sustained by the child labor, conflict minerals, etc. So those global issues are the basis of our economic system. So, but to change that, it's not only about solution, it's about mindset. So that's why education plays a key role to create the people who have that universal mindset, but also the local understanding and the local roots. We don't want having just global citizens that having, some sort of like a global discourse imposing onto the locals. We want to have people who think locally and act globally. And then the fundamental inequality will be present at local level. People are struggling at the local level. But those that struggle will be accumulated and then collectively realized at the global level. That's where we want to change. And that's how we want to change. Because there's so much you can do in the local context, but when those voices are mobilized and then acted upon solidarity, we can really change global architecture. To do that, I think education is a fundamental step. But education is still a tool. Education is not the goal, right? Education is a tool to create an understanding and a mindset that people can act on those issues and then strive towards where we want to go, the future we want. So I think that's a role of education and why it is important to think about and then contextualize in the current global injustice.